I never imagined that wearing my wife's clothes would change the direction of my entire life. If someone had told me a year earlier that one quiet Saturday morning would become the beginning of a completely different version of myself, I would have laughed, walked away, and never believed a single word. Yet that is exactly what happened. It didn't start with a dramatic confession or a secret that exploded into the open. It started with something so small that I almost ignored it forever. Emily had left early to visit her sister for the weekend. Before leaving, she smiled, kissed my cheek, and jokingly said, "Try not to destroy the house while I'm gone." I laughed and promised I wouldn't. The house felt strangely quiet after she left. I cleaned the kitchen, watched television, made coffee, and wandered from room to room looking for something to do. Eventually, I walked into our bedroom to put away the laundry. Her side of the closet was slightly open. Beautiful dresses hung neatly beside matching blouses, skirts, and cardigans. Everything looked organized, elegant, and somehow comforting. I paused longer than I should have. It wasn't the first time I had noticed how soft the fabrics looked or how carefully she chose every outfit. I had always admired her style, but this time curiosity stayed with me instead of disappearing. I reached out and gently touched the sleeve of one of her sweaters. It was softer than I expected. I smiled at myself, feeling slightly ridiculous, and pulled my hand away. But the curiosity remained. What would it actually feel like? I whispered to the empty room. The question lingered. A few minutes later, I was standing in front of the closet again. My heart beat faster than it should have. I knew I wasn't trying to become someone else. I wasn't planning anything dramatic. I simply wanted to understand something I had never allowed myself to explore. I carefully chose one of her oversized sweaters, because I thought it would fit me best. I slipped it over my head. The softness surprised me immediately. It wasn't just comfortable. It felt calming. I looked down at myself and expected to feel embarrassed. Instead, I felt strangely peaceful. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I noticed a pair of comfortable leggings folded on the shelf nearby. After hesitating for several minutes, I decided to try them too. Standing in front of the bedroom mirror, wearing clothes that had never been meant for me, I expected guilt. Instead, I saw curiosity. Not confidence. Not excitement. Just curiosity. I tilted my head, studying my reflection from every angle. The person staring back still looked completely like me. Yet something about the softer clothing changed the way I stood. Without realizing it, my shoulders relaxed. My movements became slower, more careful, more graceful. It wasn't the clothes changing me. It was how they made me think about myself. That realization stayed with me long after I changed back into my normal clothes. When Emily returned home the next evening, I acted completely normal. But for the first time in my life, I carried a quiet secret. Over the next few weeks, that curiosity returned again and again. Only when I was completely alone would I spend a few minutes trying on one sweater or a cardigan before carefully putting everything back exactly where I had found it. Each time I promised myself it would be the last. Each time, I found another excuse. One rainy afternoon, I accidentally left one of the sweaters folded differently than before. Emily noticed immediately. "You touched my clothes?" she asked with a puzzled smile. My stomach dropped. I was putting laundry away. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she walked closer. "You know," she said quietly, "you're a terrible liar." I froze. Every possible explanation disappeared from my mind. I tried one on, I admitted. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, she surprised me by asking only one question. "Did it make you happy?" I blinked. "I don't know." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's an honest answer." For the next hour, we talked more honestly than we ever had during our marriage. I admitted I had always been curious, but had buried those feelings because I thought they were strange. Emily listened without interrupting. When I finally finished, she reached for my hand. "I don't think curiosity is something you should be ashamed of. You're not angry?" She smiled. "I married you because I love the person you are, not because of the clothes hanging in your closet." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Then she stood up, walked to her wardrobe, and returned carrying a simple navy blue dress. She held it toward me. "If you're going to explore this," she said gently, Let's do it without fear. I stared at the dress, my hands shaking. I'll look ridiculous. She laughed softly. Probably. I couldn't help laughing too. But everyone looks awkward the first time they try something completely new. With trembling hands, I accepted the dress, not realizing that the moment I stepped back toward that bedroom mirror, I wasn't simply trying on another outfit. I was about to see myself from a perspective that would quietly begin changing everything. I took a deep breath and disappeared into the bathroom with the dress folded carefully over my arm. My heart pounded so loudly that it almost drowned out every other sound in the house. Looking at myself in the mirror one last time before changing, I wondered if I should turn around and forget the whole thing. It would have been easy. I could have walked out, handed the dress back to Emily, laughed about my curiosity, and pretended none of this had ever happened. Instead, I slowly changed. The fabric settled around me in a way I hadn't expected. It obviously wasn't tailored for my body, but somehow it didn't matter. I stood there for nearly a minute just feeling the material move as I shifted my weight. When I finally opened the bathroom door, Emily didn't laugh. She didn't make a joke. She simply smiled. "You look nervous." "I feel ridiculous." "You look like someone trying something new." Those words stayed with me. She walked over, adjusted one shoulder of the dress, smoothed a wrinkle near my waist, and stepped back. There. I looked at myself in the bedroom mirror. For the first time, I wasn't focusing on whether I looked masculine or feminine. I was paying attention to how relaxed my expression looked. "You keep smiling," Emily said. I didn't even notice. I did. She disappeared into the closet and came back carrying a small box. "Sit." "What is it?" "Nothing dramatic." Inside the box were a simple necklace, a bracelet, and a pair of clip-on earrings she had bought years ago for a costume party. "I don't have pierced ears," I reminded her. "I know." She carefully clipped the earrings into place before handing me the mirror. The tiny details made a surprising difference. Not because they transformed me into someone else, because they completed the feeling I had already begun to experience. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was exploring. Emily watched my reaction carefully. "So, I don't know why." "Why what?" "I feel calmer." She smiled knowingly. Sometimes people spend years trying to figure out why certain things make them feel comfortable. Over the following weeks, our evenings quietly changed. Sometimes after dinner, Emily would ask, "Want to practice?" Practice. That was the word she used. Not pretending. Not dressing up. Practice. She showed me how different fabrics draped naturally instead of fighting against every movement. She explained why certain colors worked together and why others didn't. She taught me how posture could completely change the way clothes looked. "Don't walk like you're apologizing," she laughed one evening. "I don't know how else to walk." "Then learn." She balanced a paperback book on my head. "No way." "Trust me." The book fell within 2 steps. She laughed. Again. And again. Eventually, I managed 10 careful steps before it slipped. "There you go," she said proudly. "What does this teach?" "Balance." She was right. Within a few days, my posture naturally improved. I wasn't trying to imitate anyone. I was simply becoming more aware of how I carried myself. One Saturday, Emily placed 2 photographs on the kitchen table. One showed us at a wedding several years earlier. The other had been taken the previous evening. In the second picture, I was standing beside her wearing a simple cardigan, dark jeans, and a soft scarf she had suggested I try. There was nothing exaggerated about the outfit. Nothing theatrical. Yet I noticed something immediately. My smile. She nodded. "You never smile like that in photographs." I compared them again. She was right. The newer picture showed someone who looked genuinely relaxed. "You look comfortable," Emily whispered. I think I was. For the first time, I began asking questions instead of waiting for her suggestions. "Why do you choose certain shoes with certain outfits?" "How do you know which necklace fits?" "Why does this sweater feel different from that one?" Emily answered every question patiently. Soon we were shopping together. At first, I stayed several steps behind her, terrified someone would notice what section we were browsing. Emily finally stopped walking. "What are you afraid of?" "People." They're buying groceries. I know. They're choosing towels. I know. They're worrying about their own lives. I looked around. Nobody was watching us. Nobody cared. That realization felt strangely freeing. Instead of rushing through the clothing section, Emily encouraged me to actually touch different fabrics. This one, too stiff. This, better. What makes it better? Feel how it moves. I closed my eyes for a second. She was right. Some fabrics almost resisted movement. Others seemed to flow naturally. I'd never noticed those differences before. Eventually, Emily held up a light blue sweater. This color would suit you. I've never worn blue like that. Exactly. Reluctantly, I agreed to try it. Inside the fitting room, I pulled it over my head and looked into the mirror. It fit perfectly. When I stepped outside, Emily's eyes immediately lit up. There he is. There who is. The confident version of you. I'm wearing a sweater. I know. But you're standing differently again. Without realizing it, I wasn't hiding behind crossed arms anymore. I was standing naturally, relaxed, open. On the drive home, Emily glanced at me. You know something? What? When people say you're starting to look like my wife. I laughed. No one's going to say that. She grinned mischievously. Give it time. I rolled my eyes, convinced she was teasing me. Neither of us realized that a few weeks later, an ordinary evening with friends would produce a single unexpected comment that neither of us would ever forget. Our friends had invited us over for a relaxed dinner. Nothing formal, just food, conversation, and a chance to catch up after everyone had been busy for weeks. Emily was getting ready in the bedroom while I stood in front of my closet, unsure what to wear. Normally, I would have reached for the same jeans and plain t-shirt I had worn for years without thinking. This time I hesitated. Emily noticed. Wear the cream sweater. The one we bought together? She nodded. And the dark-fitted jeans. Isn't that a little different? She smiled. Different isn't a bad thing. I changed, looked in the mirror, and noticed something surprising. Months earlier, I would have worried that the outfit looked too soft or too carefully coordinated. Now it simply felt like my style. Emily walked over, adjusted my collar, brushed an invisible speck of lint from my shoulder, and stepped back with a satisfied smile. There. What? You look good. I still don't see what you see. You will. The evening started normally. Everyone laughed, shared stories from work, and argued playfully about movies and vacation plans. I relaxed more than I expected. Halfway through dinner, Emily stood up to help in the kitchen. Without thinking, I stood up too. I'll help. One of our friends laughed. Of course you will. What does that mean? I asked. He shrugged with a grin. You two are becoming the same person. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But another friend looked at me thoughtfully. You know. What? The way you dress lately. My heart skipped. What about it? He smiled. You've started matching Emily without even trying. Emily looked at me, trying not to smile. I don't think that's a bad thing. Our friend continued. It's actually kind of sweet. You two have the same calm energy now. The conversation moved on, but those words stayed with me. On the drive home, neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, Emily broke the silence. You survived. I was terrified. I know. They noticed. They noticed you look happier. I stared out the window. I expected them to laugh. They didn't. No. They complimented you. That realization settled quietly in my mind. Over the following months, our routine became something neither of us questioned anymore. Saturday mornings became shopping mornings. Sunday afternoons became coffee dates. Sometimes Emily would experiment with different outfit combinations for both of us, just for fun. One afternoon, she held up 2 sweaters. This one for me. She handed me another. And this one's yours. I laughed. They're almost identical. I know. People are going to think. She interrupted with a playful grin. That we're married? I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the sweater. We already are. Exactly. That afternoon we walked through a local park wearing matching colors without realizing it until someone walking past smiled and said, You two make an adorable couple. Emily squeezed my hand. Thank you. After we walked a little farther, she looked at me. You know they weren't talking about the clothes. What were they talking about? The way we looked at each other. I thought about it. She was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly worried about how I was supposed to act. I simply existed. That confidence slowly spread into every part of my life. At work, I stopped apologizing before speaking during meetings. I listened more carefully. I became more patient. Even coworkers started commenting that I seemed calmer. What changed? One asked during lunch. I honestly don't know. But I did know. Exploring a hidden part of myself had quietly removed years of anxiety I hadn't even realized I was carrying. One evening, Emily found me reading articles about color coordination and clothing design. She smiled. I created a monster. I'm just curious. You've spent 2 hours comparing sweaters. They're different. They're both gray. They're completely different shades. She burst into laughter. You sound exactly like me. I couldn't argue. She was right. The more I learned, the more I appreciated details I had ignored my entire life. Texture, movement, balance, color, confidence. It wasn't about looking feminine anymore. It was about expressing myself honestly. One rainy afternoon, Emily suggested something unexpected. I have an idea. I've learned to be nervous whenever you say that. She laughed. Come with me. She drove us to a professional salon. I stared at the sign. No. Yes. I've never been inside one. I know. We should leave. She folded her arms. You trust me? Of course. Then come inside. The stylist greeted us warmly and asked what we wanted. Before I could answer, Emily smiled. We'd like matching hairstyles. I nearly choked. Matching? Emily nodded innocently. Nothing dramatic. The stylist smiled. I think I know exactly what you mean. An hour later, I looked into the mirror. My hair wasn't long. It wasn't styled dramatically. It was simply softer, neater, and shaped in a way that framed my face instead of hiding it. Emily stood beside me. For a moment, we stared at our reflections together. The stylist laughed softly. You know what's funny? What? You two really do look like you belong together. Emily slipped her arm around mine. We've been hearing that a lot lately. The stylist smiled again before saying something that made both of us freeze. If I didn't know better. She paused. I'd say you're starting to look like his wife. The room became completely silent. Emily looked at me. I looked back at her. Then we both burst into laughter. Because months earlier that sentence would have filled me with embarrassment. Now, it simply felt like another reminder of how far I'd come. And although it had started as a joke, I realized that looking like my wife had never really been about copying her appearance. It had been about learning the confidence, kindness, patience, and quiet authenticity that she carried every single day. Those were the things that had truly changed everything. That evening, after we returned home from the salon, neither of us rushed to change into comfortable clothes like we usually did. Instead, we found ourselves standing in front of the bedroom mirror again, just quietly looking at our reflections. Emily tilted her head and smiled. You know what's different? I've heard that question before. I'm serious. I don't know. A few months ago, every time you looked in the mirror, you searched for what was wrong. I stayed silent. Now, she continued, you look for what feels right. I hadn't realized she had noticed. She was right. The mirror no longer felt like an enemy. It had become a place of discovery. Not because I was trying to become someone else, but because I had finally stopped trying so hard to hide pieces of myself. The following weekend, Emily suggested reorganizing both of our closets. What could possibly take all afternoon? I asked. She laughed. You've clearly never organized clothes properly. Boxes appeared from every corner of the house. Winter clothes, summer clothes, things we never wore, things we forgot we even owned. As we worked, she suddenly held up one of my oldest jackets. When was the last time you wore this? I don't know. She handed it to me. Try it. I slipped it on. Immediately I frowned. It feels heavy. Exactly. She nodded. You've changed. It's just a jacket. No. She smiled. You've changed. I looked at myself in the mirror, wearing clothes that had once been my everyday uniform. For years I had believed they represented confidence. Now they felt like armor. Something I had worn because I thought I was supposed to. I quietly took the jacket off and folded it into the donation pile. Emily didn't say a word. She simply squeezed my hand. By the end of the afternoon, my closet looked completely different. Soft sweaters, comfortable cardigans, relaxed trousers, simple scarves. Everything reflected the person I had gradually become instead of the person I thought everyone expected me to be. Several weeks later, Emily surprised me with another idea. My office is having a costume charity dinner. Oh no.
She grinned.
Oh yes. I know that smile. The theme is famous couples. I'll rent a tuxedo. You could. I immediately became suspicious. What are you thinking? She tried not to laugh. What if?
No.
I haven't finished. I already know. What if we both dressed as each other? I stared at her. You're impossible. It would be funny. It would be terrifying. It would be memorable. For 3 days, I tried to convince her to choose something else.
She refused.
Finally, I gave in. If this goes terribly, I'll take full responsibility. The evening arrived. Emily appeared wearing one of my favorite button-up shirts, dark trousers, and casual shoes. She had even styled her hair differently. I couldn't stop laughing. You actually look like me. She gave an exaggerated nod. I've been studying my character. Then she turned toward me. My turn. She had chosen one of her simpler outfits for me. Nothing flashy. A modest knit dress, tights, comfortable flats, and a lightweight cardigan. No dramatic makeup, she assured me. Just enough to complete the costume. When I finally stood beside her, we both looked into the hallway mirror. The resemblance wasn't perfect. That wasn't the point. The point was how much fun we were having. At the charity dinner, everyone burst into laughter the moment we walked through the door. Several friends applauded. One person said it was the most creative costume of the night. Another joked that we had switched lives for the evening. The laughter wasn't cruel. It was warm,
good-natured,
supportive. Later that night, the organizers announced the winner of the costume contest. And first place goes to... Emily squeezed my hand. The married couple who literally became each other. The room erupted into applause. Walking back to our table with the small trophy, I realized something surprising. Months earlier, I would have spent the entire evening worrying about what everyone thought. Instead, I had spent the evening laughing. On the drive home, the trophy sat on the dashboard between us. Emily smiled without taking her eyes off the road. Still embarrassed? I thought for a moment.
No.
Regret it? Not even a little. What are you feeling? I looked out the window at the passing streetlights. Free. She reached across the center console and held my hand. I was hoping you'd say that. Life continued moving forward. There wasn't one dramatic moment that changed everything forever. There wasn't one huge announcement. No shocking revelation. Just hundreds of small moments that slowly built a happier life. Sometimes we coordinated outfits without even planning to. Sometimes we spent entire afternoons shopping, laughing over colors, fabrics, and styles. Sometimes we simply stayed home, drinking coffee while talking about everything and nothing. One evening, while looking through old photo albums, I found a picture of myself taken years before all of this had begun. I hardly recognized the expression on my own face. I looked tired, guarded, almost disconnected. Emily placed a recent photo beside it. The difference wasn't the clothes. It wasn't the hairstyle. It wasn't even the smile. It was the peace in my eyes. She quietly leaned her head against my shoulder. Which version of yourself do you like better? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I kept looking at both photographs. One showed the person I thought I had to be. The other showed the person I had slowly allowed myself to become. Finally, I smiled. The second one. I agree. I wrapped an arm around her as we closed the album. Looking like my wife had never really been about wearing similar clothes or sharing the same sense of style. It wasn't about becoming her. It was about discovering that confidence can be learned, kindness can be reflected, and authenticity grows stronger every time you stop pretending to be someone you're not. In the end, what changed everything wasn't the sweater, the dress, the hairstyle, or even the mirror. It was having someone who never tried to change me into a different person. She simply gave me the courage to become the most honest version of myself. And once that journey began, there was no reason to hide anymore.